Hi, Phil. Thank you very much for joining us today. How are things in Toronto?
Everything's great here. A little chilly, but doing well. Thanks, James. Good to talk to you.
Phil, it's been a few months since we last spoke, and you and your team have been very busy acquiring uranium assets. You own a total of 18 assets now in 4 different countries. And I want to start right there with your overall corporate strategy and what is the objective of acquiring so many assets around the globe?
Yeah, thanks. And that's a great place to start. And yes, we've been very busy. We've added those 18 projects in what we think are some of the top jurisdictions around the world. Of course, Canada, Australia, the U.S., and Argentina. But the strategy is really to build a production company. And so what we have is with those projects, we've sort of divided them into these 3 buckets, and we have near-term production assets, and I'm sure we're going to talk in detail about them. But in Utah, we have past-producing mines that can be turned on relatively quickly back into production. And then we have in the kind of, so that's the first bucket, and really the goal of the company is to fill that first bucket with multiple development projects around the world. And where we're going to fill that bucket up, the projects that we're going to fill that bucket up with come from the other bucket. So the second bucket is a near-term, medium-term exploration projects. And those are really our Australian and Argentina projects, which we're actively working on right now, and we'll do more work this year. And then the third bucket is what we call the long-term call option bucket. And so these are projects, and the projects are in Quebec, in Virginia, Matoush, and Coles Hill. And these are, world-class potential ore bodies, whether it's be by size or by grade, that for one reason or another have an impediment towards development today. We think that with the support for nuclear power globally and thus the requirement for additional uranium mines, that these projects ultimately will have pathways towards production and potentially move into that first bucket. And then we also look to add to that first bucket through additional M&A. And again, I'm sure we're going to talk about that, but we're very busy looking at a number of different opportunities.
Yeah, we will definitely bring that up. But as you mentioned, your assets fall into 3 different categories just based on how advanced they are. And your most advanced project is Tony M. It's located in the state of Utah. You recently completed confirmation drilling and a resource update. Why don't you provide a brief overview of that resource update? What's the size of the resource and also the grade?
Sure. Yeah. So we put that resource out a few months ago, and it came in at 8.8 million pounds in total, 6.6 in the indicated category and 2.2 in the inferred category. Importantly, the grade is very strong. So it's about 0.28% uranium. And to put that in context for watchers, that's an order of magnitude higher than the average grade project around the world, which would be lower than 0.1. And to put it on a gold equivalent basis, it's about a 5.5 gram ore body using current uranium and current gold prices.
And was the resource update consistent with the previous resource done by Energy Fuels?
Absolutely. So Energy Fuels had a resource that they did in 2012, and that was based on a significant amount of drilling. And I think we should really highlight how advanced this project is. It was a past producing mine, fully developed. There's 18 miles of underground working. There's 1.5 million feet of drilling into the deposit. So we weren't expecting any surprises. And if you look at that resource, the resource that we put out versus the Energy Fuels resource at the same cutoff, it was virtually identical.
And now that the resource is complete, what are the next steps?
Well, yeah, so this came out of the report, and there's a couple of things that we're going to do this year. And we're in the process of making the plans, and we'll put a press release out shortly to the market detailing them. But it's going to involve a couple of things. So the first is we're going to continue to do some surface drilling, and we do think there are some places to expand the deposit. So we're going to do a surface drill program. We're also going to look at opening the underground. One of the key points that came out of the report was that there's vanadium at this project that historically hadn't been sampled or put into a resource. And the vanadium ratio of vanadium to uranium ranged in the results that we found ranged from 1:1 to up to 17:1. And that's typical down in this part of the world. You do get vanadium together with the uranium. And so we're going to open up the underground and do some sampling within the existing workings to see if we can move the vanadium into a resource category. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to undertake a PEA. And so that's so we understand the exact economics of bringing this project back into production.
And another advantage of Tony M is the accessibility to Energy Fuels White Mesa mill. Can you just expand on the benefits of being so close to this mill?
Well, the proximity is a huge benefit, of course, but I think the real key is that we actually have access to this mill, and it's a unique situation that we find ourselves in with our partnership with Energy Fuels. Energy Fuels has the only currently licensed and operable conventional mill in the U.S. at White Mesa, which is trucking distance to the Tony M project. And through our partnership with Energy Fuels, we're the only company, junior company, any company, quite frankly, that has guaranteed access to that mill to process our ore. So it's all well and good to have a project like Tony M that's fully permitted, constructed before, has an updated resource that could be mined. But if you don't have a place to send the ore to process it, you're years away from actually turning that ore into yellowcake and generating revenue for the company.
That's a great overview of Tony M. I want to move on now and discuss your most recent acquisition, which is Virginia Energy. It's located in the state of Virginia, and Virginia is a pro-nuclear state. It has 4 nuclear reactors, which supply 14% of its electricity. Can you just provide us what the rationale was for acquiring this asset?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very excited to have this project. This was a project that from the very early days of the Consolidated Uranium story was something that was on our radar screen. And why wouldn't it be? It's the largest undeveloped uranium project in the world at over 160 million pounds. That is globally significant in terms of size, ranks one of the top 10 ore bodies in the world. And so it was obviously on our radar screen. Why else was it on our radar screen? It's in the US. And then, as you point, which is the largest consumer of uranium through its nuclear power fleet, and it's in Virginia, a pro-nuclear state, as you point out. It has reactors, and it has a new Republican governor who's very much bullish on nuclear energy and has gone all in. So we think this asset is a tremendous addition to our portfolio. As I highlighted at the beginning, it fits into that long-term call option bucket. But certainly we think it's a company maker on its own if we can advance it.
So we've mentioned Energy Fuels a couple of times, but I neglected to make mention of the fact that they are your largest shareholder, and you have a strategic alliance with them. Can you just touch on the benefits of this alliance?
Absolutely. And when we made the acquisition of those projects, it was not simply sell us some assets and walk away. We really, joined together with Energy Fuels and became partners. And it manifests in a couple of different ways. So the first way, which we talked about, is the toll milling agreement. Again, this is a huge differentiator for a junior company like ourselves. No one else has access to this mill. There are no other mills that are operable. So that's huge. Secondly, they're a big shareholder of us. In fact, they were also a shareholder of Virginia. So they maintain now, post that transaction, about a 16% interest in the company. And as part of being a big shareholder, they have some rights, including equity participation, but also putting someone on the board. And so as part of that transaction, Mark Chalmers, the CEO of Energy Fuels, came on our board. Mark is an invaluable resource. He's a mining engineer. He's been in the uranium space his entire career. He's been all over the world operating and building mines, and so it brings tremendous experience and credibility to our company. And then the third part of the agreement is an operating partnership, where effectively we get access to the entire Energy Fuels team to second them to our projects as we need them. And so that's whether that's environmental, engineering, geology, mining. We get access to these experts, not only in those fields, but quite frankly, they're experts on these projects. We get to use them as we need them. And so we don't have to build up our own team when we can access those people. Of course, we do have our own guys as well, but they're it's very complementary, very close working relationship, and we couldn't have asked for a better partner.
I want to move on now and discuss your finances. Given that you are focused on acquisitions and consolidation, your balance sheet is very important. So how much cash do you have?
Yeah, so look, at our last financial statements to the end of September, we had about $20 million in working capital. It's come down since then, of course, but we're still very well funded to execute on this business plan and pursue some additional M&A opportunities. For the most part, the M&A transactions that we've completed, including Virginia, have been, we've issued shares for those transactions. And I think that's going to continue to be the way that we do further acquisitions, but having capital both to execute our programs on, say, for example, Tony M and in Australia and Argentina is important, but also certainly having additional cash is great for M&A opportunities. It can sometimes be the difference maker, and it was, for example, in our Matouche acquisition.
And I want to continue on with this discussion on M&A, given that's your primary strategy. How many deals, I'm curious how many deals you looked at in 2022, and how many of those deals did you turn down for whatever reason?
Yeah, that's a long list, James. And if we were in my office, behind me on the wall, I have all the projects, uranium projects in the world on a map. We're constantly evaluating projects. Turning down projects, yes, we definitely turned down projects last year that didn't fit into the portfolio. But sometimes even when we turn projects down, it's not because it's not a project specific thing or a company specific thing. It may not be the right time. And I think Virginia is a perfect example of that. Our conversations, and this is all disclosed in the various documents around the transaction. Those conversations started a couple of years ago, and then timing just became right for us to do the transaction when we did.
And when you're looking at acquisitions, are you looking at specific jurisdictions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're gonna see the work that we do continues to focus on the jurisdictions that we're in, and it's a really important consideration, and I think it's being maybe overlooked by the investment community. You want to be in safe jurisdictions, stable jurisdictions. So Canada, Australia, and the U.S., particularly for mining, are great jurisdictions. You know what you own. In terms of the tenure of the projects. That's not the case around the world, and we're seeing some of that play out in other parts of the world, even right now, and particularly in the uranium space. You also want to be in stable countries, you want to be in mining friendly countries, you want to be in nuclear countries, you want to be in countries that have a history of uranium mining, and all of the countries that we're in today check 2, 3, if not all 4 of those boxes. And so I think we're going to focus largely on those jurisdictions going forward.
And so that's a good point. You're going to continue on with this M&A strategy. You're still looking at assets.
Oh, absolutely. And so I think, and again, if you go back to our strategy about the buckets, we want to fill that near-term production bucket. So we'll look at assets on that front. There's also, and so there are things that we're looking at that could be, quite frankly, transformational for the business. There's also smaller, what we call tuck-in acquisitions. And if you look at what we did in Australia over the last year, I think we acquired 5 projects, and they were all in and around some of the existing things that we're doing, just bulking up that portfolio. And so I think you can see things on that side, and I think you can see potentially transformational acquisitions as well. And then the third piece, and maybe you were going to go there anyways, is we're also looking at how to rationalize the portfolio and realize value. And we did spin out a project into a new company last year, and there's other opportunities to potentially do that going forward.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So that company that you spun out was Labrador Uranium. You are now the interim CEO. Do you want to provide an update on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Labrador, as I said, was spun out of CUR last year, but it was in keeping with our kind of philosophy of creating more value out of the assets. It wasn't just our assets that we spun out. We partnered up with Altius and Mega Uranium, who have projects in and around our Moran Lake project in Labrador, and put together the largest land position in that camp. For the first time that camp is basically consolidated outside of Paladin's Michelin project. We own virtually the entire district. Yes, I came in as interim CEO in January, and we're really, we had a good drill program last year. We had some very encouraging results that we put out into the market recently, and we're very busy working towards an active drill program this year. Work program, we've got over $7 million budgeted. We're going to go in and follow up some of the success that we had last year, look for targets further afield, and then do some very exciting work on the larger project area, because it really hasn't been explored with modern techniques. Labrador has a great history of mining, has some phenomenal mines, but they were generally found by prospectors just finding outcrop. Work on understanding what's happening below the surface through modern geophysical techniques hasn't been done. We're going to fly a district-wide gravity survey with radiometrics early this year, and I think that's going to light up some very interesting targets for the company that we can pursue over the coming years.
And when will that drilling program begin?
So the season, it's a summer season there, so a couple of months away, but we're busy in the planning mode. And again, we'll have more updates in terms of the specifics around that program in the coming months. But the planning is, we're deep in the planning process and pretty excited to get started there again.
The winters are just too brutal to drill?
Well, you can, but you have to put in a lot more infrastructure. It's definitely more expensive. So for now, we'll stick to summer drilling. We built a camp last year, easy access to the project from there. Yeah, that's the game plan right now. Just keep it to the summer.
Bill, as we wrap up, you and your team have completed 19 acquisitions since the formation of the company. You've grown the market cap from 2 million to over 150 million. What can investors look forward to in the coming months from Consolidated Uranium?
Yeah, James, it's going to be a very busy year again. I think you're gonna look for activity from us on kind of two sides. So it's on the project side. Went through what we're going to do at Tony M. That's going to get started in a couple of months. In fact, we're drilling at the Dineros project right now, so we'll get an update for the market on that shortly. We also have work programs planned both in Argentina and Australia. And then on the other side, watch for us to continue to be busy on the M&A front. Detailed some of the things that we're working on strategically. And I think there'll be a number of very interesting acquisitions or M&A things that the company undertakes.
Bill, that was a great update, and congratulations on your latest acquisition, Virginia Energy, and we look forward to future updates. Once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James. Great to talk to you.